Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the differences between being poor and being rich with regards to the struggles that you would have. And believe it or not, you're going to have struggles at every stage of your life. There's just going to be a different set of struggles or problems. But most people, they don't understand the struggles of being rich because they unfortunately stay here. And I remember when I was poor, the biggest struggle that I had was finding people who would actually be good teachers, right? There's a lot of people out there who's like, "Oh, I'll teach you this, that," and then they're like probably some of the worst um, teachers out there, like the worst. Like, I don't understand why so many people want to go into the teaching space and then take advantage of poor people. In fact, if you want to get rich, like sell to rich people, right? Like, but there are a lot of people out there, who I guess I don't want to say make a living, but I don't if that's the way it is. They make a living off of taking advantage of poor people. And as a poor person, whenever you hear maybe like an advertisement or something like that, but how there's a guy or whoever out there to help you get out of poverty, and I would never make that claim because I don't make any guarantees. It's very appealing, and I fell for that trap many, many times, right? And so that's why, like, one of the biggest struggles, especially if you have a desire to get out of being poor, is there are essentially no good teachers, right? Like, every time I've dealt with a person, almost every time where it's like, I'm going to help you do XYZ and it's easy money, they've 99.9999999% failed me. So that's essentially the struggle of being poor. Now, once you have some money, right, there's going to be a struggle of being rich. And if you ever listen to the very, very rich people, now, not all rich people are the same, just like not all poor people are the same, right? But you're going to hear a lot of crazy talk, which is kind of and kind of not like I don't know how to say this. Like you could kind of hear in their voice that they resent poor people, right? And if you ever become rich, I'll tell you why that rich people would resent poor people. It's because a lot of them have no work ethic and they're not reliable, right? Like they're totally not reliable. And again, there are different, flavors of that. Like for example, let's say you come from an immigrant in this country, you're probably 100 times more reliable than someone who's poor and grew up in this country, right? So I get that there's different nuances of that there, but when you become rich, one of the hardest struggles that you'll come to understand is that it's very hard to find people who actually do what they say they're going to do. In fact, I kind of might think of the way that I modeled myself is just kind of like a bank, right? Banks always assume that you're going to rip them off, which is why like so much of their effort goes into making sure that you never step into their door. Meaning that the reason why they have like credit scores and huge databases is so that when they know that they lend money, that they're they know that they're not going to get ripped off, right? And they've come to understand that hey, if I keep most of the people out of the door, that really reduces my chances of getting ripped off. And so, if a bank has that struggle, what makes you think you're not going to have that struggle when you become rich? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's not a lot of people out there who are reliable, just like there's not a lot of people out there you can actually loan money to. Like, if you take a look at the percentages of people who qualify for mortgages, 90% of people in this country don't qualify for a mortgage. So you're dealing with only a 10% of people, which is very small. Like one out of 10 people at most are able to do business with you, right? And so I hope you kind of get my drift about like what the struggle of being rich is and having a lot of money is not a lot of people that you can actually work with. And I don't know if you ever heard of Price's Law. Let me just write this right here. Price's Law. And this is kind of like the struggle of being rich when you do have a lot of money and you need help. So if you, it's kind of similar to Pareto distribution. I don't know if you ever heard of like the 80-20 rule, but if you've never heard of it, it's just basically saying that most people are useless. Now, Price's law is just kind of another version of that, but the law states that the square root of the number of contributors generates approximately 50% of an organization's output. So, what does that even mean? Okay, so let's say you have a 10,000 person company, right? 10,000 employees, or let me, instead of person, let me put employee. 10,000 employees in your company. What's the square root of 100? Can I do math functions in Microsoft Word? I'm pretty sure I can, but or I'm sorry, not a square root of 100. Square root of 10,000. Spoiled the math problem for you. So what's the square root of 10K? That's actually 100. Okay, so basically, Price's law says that 100 people in a 10,000 K, employee company do 50% of the work. So, even if you're rich and even if you, let's say, are an owner or CEO of a 10,000 person company, yeah, you'll find some reliable people, but they're going to be very, very few, right? Like very, very few. In fact, this is why I say like it's actually much easier to impress a billion-dollar company than an average person. And I know this may seem kind of weird. It's because the average person fits into the useless category. Whereas the billion-dollar company, they're in that 100 people category, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, just again, ignore what I'm saying. I'm a little bit crazy, but this is essentially the struggle of being rich is that you just cannot find reliable people, or it's very, very hard. And it's not that you can't. And again, when you think about like, people are like, I'm so frustrated with everybody I work with. I was like, dude, I live in the um, same planet as you do, right? But the thing is, once you kind of understand, like, hey, this is actually normal, and you just have to learn how to navigate it. Think about it. Like, if I had a 10,000 person company, 10,000 people, and I realized 100 people from that 10,000 people company were doing 50% of the work, you know, if I were poor and I knew this, I think I would have just been had too much shock and trauma that many people are useless, which is why there are no good teachers, right? So this is all kind of related. We live in the same planet and ecosystem, right? You think I can't? I'm a little bit frustrated. Well, I kind of learned to accept it, which is why I'm not. But what I'm saying is that you're gonna have struggles at every stage of your life, and the struggles that you're gonna have are people problems. They are 99% going to be people problems. It's not going to be problems with actual goods, resources. It's going to be people problems because most people are unreliable, right? They totally are. And the worst part is I don't know if you ever heard that Jack Ma quote about poor people. Uh, let's see if I can find it. And this is kind of why I say, like, a lot of rich people look down upon poor people, not in the reason why you think they do, but it's because they essentially don't try new things, and they look down upon almost every single thing about how you can't do this or that, right? Or they're really slow. They're really, really, really slow, right? Okay, but basically, if you don't know who Jack Ma is, I think it's like the basically Alibaba. I think it's like the Chinese Amazon. I don't know. But he says the worst people to serve are the poor people. Give them free. They think it's a trap. Tell them it's a small investment. They'll say they can't earn much. Tell them to come in big. They'll say no money. You get it? Like when you're rich and you deal with poor people, like here's the thing, you could have been poor too. Like I used to make $20,000 a year. That's why I know what the struggles of being a poor person is, but not a lot. It's kind of like being in a class of 30 bad kids. You could have been the 31st good kid, but it doesn't mean like it doesn't negate that like the rest of the class and in those kids are pretty bad, right? Like so that's why I say like okay, like even if you're poor, it doesn't mean it applies to you. It's just saying as a rule, as an average, especially when you view it from the eyes of a rich person, poor people no good. right? And I kind of have like a heart for poor people, right? Because again, I used to be poor, but once you get to that level, you're like, ooh, you know, it's kind of like, you know, if you were poor and you have a lot of ambition, it's like, man, I just need a bank loan to start my business and I could get out of troubles, right? But once you become the bank and there's 100 people like that stepping on your door, you're like, ooh, I need to get these people out of here because if I lend to them, I'm going to be broke. Kind of like Goldman Sachs, right? Goldman Sachs. And I know I'm just kind of relating a lot of random things, kind of like an episode of Family Guy, but I don't know if you ever heard of Goldman Sachs' regret of doing consumer lending. Uh, oh, you ever see this? Like, we should have never effing done this thing. So Apple Card and Apple Savings are performing so poorly for Goldman Sachs. One executive reportedly said that we should have never effing done this thing, right? So again, I don't, I know I'm just doing a lot of random tangents like a Family Guy episode, but yeah. So this is essentially the struggles of being rich, and most people won't even get here anyway. So I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'll be honest, but people get mad at me, and I'm just like a random stranger on the internet. But I have a lot of love for everybody, right? One of the ways I got out of being poor is learning how to work with rich people. Like, here's the funny thing, right? And this is kind of crazy, and none of you will believe me. I could say one thing to, let's say, a group of college students, and they'll think I'm like the stupidest person on earth. And then I could say the same exact thing to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and they'll say, "Oh my goodness, you're a genius." Isn't that sad? But yeah. All right. Well, this is Crane Atlanta Mentorship. I don't know. Like, is there anything else that I need to talk about? Oh yeah, we're gonna have a live stream later today at 6 p.m. Today is Tuesday, April 30th. Okay, and so 6 p.m. Eastern, there's gonna be a live stream, but you do have to be a YouTube channel member for that. Other than that, have a great day, everybody, and we will speak next time.